Most engines are built to fail. Planned obsolescence, fancy electronics, and fragile parts make sure you're back at the dealership in no time. But not all engines play that game. Some were so tough, so stubborn, they refused to die even after hundreds of thousands of miles. Ever wonder which old engines could outlast everything you threw at them? Stick around, because these legends of durability might just surprise you. Ford 300 Inline 6. Some engines earn respect. Others demand it. The Ford 300 Inline 6 falls into the second category. Born in the mid-1960s and running all the way through the mid-1990s, this engine wasn't about speed or glamour. It was about pure, unfiltered endurance. Farmers, construction crews, and small-town mechanics all swore by it because they knew one thing: it would never let them down. What made it so bulletproof? For starters, it had a cast-iron block and head and a ridiculously simple design. No turbos, no computers, no gimmicks. Just 6 cylinders lined up in a row, chugging along like a factory machine. Torque was the name of the game here. It didn't rev high, but it pulled hard, making it perfect for hauling trailers, running pumps, and handling brutal workloads. Stories still circulate of Ford 300s, logging 500,000 miles without major rebuilds. Some were used in commercial fleets where downtime wasn't an option, and yet they kept running. Oil change after oil change. Mechanics loved them too, because if anything did break, parts were cheap, repairs were simple, and the engine was forgiving enough to keep running even when neglected. In an era of fragile tech and overcomplicated motors, the Ford 300 Inline 6 reminds us that simplicity often wins. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't fast, but it was one of the longest-lasting engines America ever built. Chevrolet Small Block V8, Gen 1. When Chevrolet unveiled the Small Block V8 in 1955, nobody could have predicted just how much of a legend it would become. This wasn't just an engine. It was the heart of hot rods, muscle cars, pickup trucks, and family sedans for decades. But beyond the performance, the real magic was its staying power. The small block was brilliantly engineered. Its pushrod design kept moving parts to a minimum, and its cast-iron block gave it the toughness to shrug off abuse. Mechanics loved how easy it was to tear down and rebuild, which meant these engines could be refreshed again and again instead of being scrapped. Owners often reported 200,000 to 300,000 miles before even thinking about a rebuild, and with care, many went far beyond that. What made the small block special wasn't just durability. It was versatility. You could find it powering a Corvette, a Camaro, or a humble pickup. The parts were interchangeable, the aftermarket was huge, and the design evolved across generations without losing its core strength. Even today, small blocks from the 1960s and 70s are still running strong in classic cars and work trucks. If the Ford 300 was the farmer's workhorse, the Chevy small block was the blue-collar champion of the street. Dependable, tough, and endlessly adaptable, it proved that great design doesn't just last for years, it lasts for generations. Mercedes-Benz OM617 diesel. If you've ever seen an old Mercedes taxi still running after 30 years, chances are it had the OM617 under the hood. Introduced in the 1970s, this 3.0-liter inline-5 diesel engine quickly built a reputation for being virtually indestructible. While most engines tapped out after 150,000 miles, the OM617 was just getting warmed up. The secret was over-engineering. Mercedes built this engine like it expected owners to abuse it forever. A cast-iron block, forged internals, and a timing chain that often lasted as long as the engine itself made it nearly impossible to kill. Drivers routinely racked up 500,000 miles, and some OM617s even crossed the million-mile mark with only routine maintenance. That's not myth. It's documented history. It wasn't about speed or horsepower. In fact, this engine was downright slow by modern standards. But it didn't care about lap times. It cared about getting you where you needed to go, year after year, without complaint. In Europe, it powered taxis that spent 12 hours a day on the road. In America, it became a cult favorite among diesel fans who valued reliability over flash. The OM617 is proof that sometimes durability is the ultimate luxury. It didn't roar, it hummed. It didn't thrill, it endured. And in the end, that endurance made it one of the most respected engines Mercedes ever built. Toyota 22R. Some engines are legends because of speed, others because of innovation. The Toyota 22R? It's a legend because it just wouldn't quit. Produced from the late 1970s through the mid-1990s, this 2.4-liter inline 4 powered everything from Hilux pickups to 4Runners. And for decades, it set the standard for bulletproof reliability in small trucks. The 22R was simple but tough. A cast iron block, aluminum head, and timing chain setup gave it both durability and ease of maintenance. With basic care, regular oil changes and chain replacements, these engines could run for 300,000 miles without breaking a sweat. Push them harder, and you'd still see stories of 400,000 or even 500,000 miles. This wasn't an engine that demanded gentle treatment. Owners flogged their Toyotas off-road, overloaded them with gear, and drove them through deserts and mountains. The 22R shrugged it all off. It wasn't powerful, but it was reliable in a way that built Toyota's reputation worldwide. Even today, mechanics speak fondly of the 22R. It's easy to work on. Parts are everywhere, and it doesn't require fancy diagnostics. It embodies everything that made Toyota famous for reliability in the first place. If you wanted an engine you could trust in the middle of nowhere, the 22R was it. Chrysler Slant 6. Every automaker has that one underdog engine that surprises everyone, and for Chrysler, it was the Slant 6. Introduced in 1960, this inline 6 got its name from its unique 30-degree tilt in the engine bay. It looked odd, but that tilt allowed for a lower hood line and a stronger intake design. More importantly, it created one of the toughest engines Chrysler ever built. The Slant 6 came in 170, 198, and 225 cubic inch versions, with the 225 being the most famous. This engine wasn't glamorous, but it was nearly impossible to kill. Taxi companies loved it. Fleet vehicles relied on it. Backyard mechanics swore by it. With its cast iron block and under-stress design, the Slant 6 often ran for 250,000 to 300,000 miles without a rebuild. Some went much further. What made it so popular was how forgiving it was. Neglect it, abuse it, even run it with minimal maintenance, and it would still fire up every morning. It wasn't fast, but it was smooth and dependable. In the muscle car era, the Slant 6 was overshadowed by V8s, but it quietly carved out a reputation as one of the most enduring engines of its time. In a world where reliability often gets overlooked, the Chrysler Slant 6 was a humble hero. It may not have dominated drag strips, but it dominated the test of time. Honda B Series. When Honda dropped the B Series in the late 1980s, they didn't just make an engine, they launched a revolution. Suddenly, compact cars weren't just about saving gas. They were about performance, speed, and endurance. The B16, B18, and other variants powered icons like the Civic C and Integra, and they quickly became the soul of the tuner scene. Here's the secret. These engines were designed with rock-solid internals and Honda's VTEC system, which gave them two personalities. At low revs, they sipped fuel. At high revs, they screamed past 8,000 RPM without flinching. That balance meant you could push them hard without breaking them. Even after years of abuse, B-Series engines regularly hit 250,000 miles and kept running strong. Ask any mechanic or tuner, and you'll hear stories of B16 and B18 surviving turbo builds, nitrous shots, and endless track days. The block was strong, the oiling system reliable, and the head design allowed for serious airflow. Yet, despite all that, the B-Series wasn't fragile or temperamental. It was easy to work on, with parts everywhere, making it the perfect playground for enthusiasts. Today, decades after production ended, B-Series engines are still prized for their blend of performance and durability. They're proof that high revving fun doesn't have to mean short lifespans. Honda built them to last, and they did, with style. Volvo B230. If you've ever wondered why old Volvos seem impossible to kill, the answer sits under the hood. The B230. This 2.3-liter inline-4 powered the iconic 240 and 740 series throughout the 1980s and 1990s, and it earned a reputation for being one of the toughest engines ever built. What made it legendary was its simplicity and strength. The B230 used a cast-iron block, forged steel crankshaft, and basic, no-nonsense engineering. No overcomplication, no fragile parts, just raw durability. Owners regularly racked up 300,000 to 400,000 miles, and some pushed past 500,000. There are even documented cases of million-mile Volvos, many of them powered by this engine. But here's the kicker. These weren't pampered classics. They were family haulers, winter beaters, and long-distance commuters. They were driven hard in brutal Scandinavian winters, neglected by budget owners, and still refused to quit. The B230 shrugged off abuse that would have killed lesser engines. Even outside of Volvos, the B230 became popular in custom builds and industrial equipment, further proving its adaptability. It wasn't fast and it wasn't glamorous, but it had one mission: keep running, and it did that better than most engines of its time. The B230 is the definition of stubborn longevity. It didn't care if you skipped a service or two, it just kept going, mile after mile. Jeep 4.0 Inline 6. Few engines define a brand the way the Jeep 4.0 Inline 6 does. Introduced in the 1980s, this straight six powered Cherokees, Wranglers, and Grand Cherokees for nearly 2 decades. And if you talk to Jeep fans, they'll tell you this engine wasn't just good, it was legendary. The 4.0 was built on AMC's old straight six architecture, but Jeep refined it into a tank. Cast iron block, cast iron head, and a long stroke design gave it low-end torque and indestructible reliability. It wasn't flashy, but it was perfectly matched to Jeep's off-road mission. Climbing rocks, fording rivers, crawling trails, the 4.0 never flinched. The proof is in the mileage. Countless Jeep 4.0s have gone 300,000 miles without major work. Many owners joke that the body of the Jeep will rust away before the engine dies. It could take abuse like overheating, poor maintenance and heavy loads, yet still start every morning. Mechanics loved it because it was simple to work on and parts were cheap and plentiful. Enthusiasts still consider it one of the best off-road engines ever made. It may not win races, but in terms of sheer reliability and toughness, it's hard to top. The Jeep 4.0 Inline 6 is an engine you could trust anywhere, from the backwoods to the daily commute. Toyota 2JZ GTE. If durability had a celebrity, it would be the Toyota 2JZ GTE. Introduced in the 1990s and made famous by the Supra, this 3.0-liter twin-turbo inline 6 became the poster child for unbreakable engines. Car enthusiasts everywhere know one thing about the 2JZ. It can take ridiculous amounts of power without giving up. From the factory, it made around 280 to 320 horsepower. But tuners discovered it could handle much, much more. Stock internals have been known to survive 600, 800, even 1,000 horsepower builds. And here's the best part. Even heavily modified 2JZs often keep running for 100,000 miles or more. That's unheard of in the performance world. The secret was Toyota's design. The cast iron block was built like a fortress. The forged internals were incredibly strong, and the oiling system was over-engineered to handle serious stress. On top of that, it was smooth, reliable, and didn't demand exotic maintenance. Stories of Supras and Aristos running 500,000 miles on their original 2JZs aren't rare. Even when neglected, these engines often outlast the cars they're in. And when maintained, they're practically immortal. The 2JZ isn't just an engine. It's a legend of both performance and endurance, proving that you don't have to sacrifice strength for speed. Cummins 5.9-liter 12-valve diesel. If the Mercedes OM617 was the king of longevity in Europe, the Cummins 5.9-liter 12-valve diesel was its American counterpart. Introduced in the late 1980s for Dodge Ram trucks, this straight-six turbo diesel changed the truck market forever. The 5.9 12-valve was built like farm equipment, cast iron everything, forged internals, and a design so tough it could handle endless punishment. It was mechanical, not electronic, which meant fewer things to break. Owners discovered that with regular oil changes and basic maintenance, these engines could easily hit 500,000 miles. Some even doubled that. Truckers and farmers loved it because it produced massive torque at low RPM, perfect for hauling heavy loads. Tuners loved it because it responded to simple upgrades like bigger injectors and pumps without braking. And mechanics loved it because it was straightforward to service. Even today, used Ram trucks with the 5.9 12-valve often sell for premium prices, just because of the engine. It built a reputation as one of the toughest diesels ever sold in America. The Cummins 5.9-liter 12-valve wasn't just a truck engine. It was a workhorse, a torque monster, and a legend that showed what happens when you mix simplicity with strength. It's the kind of engine that could outlast the truck itself. Nissan L Series, L28. Before the Skyline GTR became a household name, Nissan was already building engines that refused to quit. The most famous was the L28, the 2.8-liter inline six that powered the Datsun 280Z throughout the 1970s. It wasn't just an engine, it was a statement. With the L28, Nissan proved that Japanese reliability wasn't just hype, it was the real deal. The formula was simple. A cast iron block gave it strength, while the aluminum head kept weight down. Power hovered between 150 and 170 horsepower, which may not sound earth-shattering today, but it was more than enough to make the 280Z a genuine sports car in its time. More importantly, the L28 could take abuse for years and still fire up. Owners routinely pushed past 250,000 and 300,000 miles without serious rebuilds, an astonishing feat back then. Mechanics loved its straightforward design. No fragile electronics, no exotic parts. Just an engine that responded well to maintenance and was forgiving when you missed a service or two. Tuners pushed it harder with carb upgrades, turbos, and high compression builds, and it still took the punishment. Even now, countless Z cars still run their original L28s. Decades later, they remain proof that Nissan could build engines every bit as tough as Europe's best. The L28 wasn't flashy, but it earned its legend through sheer endurance. Pontiac 389 V8. Pontiac's glory, years in the 1960s, were fueled by one engine, the 389 V8. This powerhouse not only launched the muscle car era with the GTO, but also earned a reputation for rugged reliability that kept it on the road long after the party ended. The 389 was big, tough, and versatile. With a cast iron block and strong internals, it produced anywhere from 215 to 360 horsepower depending on configuration. More importantly, it was built to take punishment. Hot rodders pushed it hard. Drag racers flogged it weekend after weekend, and yet the 389 held together. With routine maintenance, these engines often logged 200,000 miles. Impressive for the muscle car era. What set it apart was its flexibility. Pontiac engineers designed it so the same basic block could handle multiple displacements and power levels. That meant the 389 could evolve without sacrificing durability. Mechanics found it easy to service, and owners loved that it didn't need constant babysitting. Even as emissions laws and fuel crises killed off many muscle car engines, the 389 lived on in legend. Today, surviving examples still fire up without hesitation, a testament to Pontiac's engineering. The Pontiac 389 wasn't just the start of the GTO craze. It was a durable work of art that proved muscle and longevity could coexist. BMW M30 Straight 6. When BMW introduced the M30 Straight 6 in the late 1960s, they weren't just building another engine. They were creating the backbone of their brand's reputation for smooth, durable power. This engine stayed in production for over 2 decades, powering everything from the 5 Series to the 7 Series. And it earned every bit of its reputation. The M30 was built tough. It featured a cast iron block and a 7-bearing crankshaft, which gave it incredible durability. Unlike engines with timing belts that needed regular replacement, the M30 used a timing chain that often lasted the life of the engine. That small detail saved owners thousands over the years and helped the M30 hit astonishing mileage numbers. Plenty of M30s have reached 300,000, 400,000, and even 500,000 miles with only routine care. They weren't fragile high-performance motors that required constant attention. They were built to be driven hard, daily, and for decades. Another strength was its smoothness. The M30 wasn't just durable, it was refined, delivering silky performance that made long-distance driving a pleasure. For BMW, this engine set the standard for everything that followed. In the world of classic straight sixes, the M30 stands as one of the greats: tough, reliable, and endlessly smooth. It's the kind of engine that makes you believe in old-school German engineering. International Harvester S VV8. Not all legendary engines came from sports cars or luxury sedans. Some were born in the fields and farms of America. The International Harvester SV Series 5.8s, built from the 1950s through the 1980s, were the definition of industrial strength. These engines powered pickups, scouts, and even farm equipment, and they quickly earned a reputation for being nearly unkillable. Displacements ranged from 266 to 392 cubic inches, but all shared the same DNA. Cast iron construction, simple carburation, and overbuilt internals. They weren't high-revving screamers, but they didn't need to be. They produced torque, and lots of it, which made them perfect for towing, plowing, and heavy work. Owners often joked that these engines would outlast the vehicles around them. It wasn't unusual for an International Harvester V8 to log 300,000 miles or more while working under brutal conditions. Farmers trusted them because downtime wasn't an option, and the engines delivered year after year. What also made them remarkable was how forgiving they were. Poor maintenance, dusty fields, and heavy loads didn't faze them. Change the oil, keep fuel flowing, and they'd keep chugging along. Today, enthusiasts restoring old Scouts or pickups still praise the SV engines. They may not have been glamorous, but they were dependable in a way modern engines rarely are. Toyota UZ Series 5.8.1 UZFE. When Toyota decided to take on the luxury market with the Lexus LS 400 in 1989, they knew the engine had to be flawless. The result was the one UZ-FE, the first of the UZ Series V8s. What they built was nothing short of legendary, a 4.0-liter aluminum block V8 that combined smoothness, power, and an almost supernatural ability to last forever. The one UZFE was over-engineered from the start. Toyota built it to aerospace tolerances, with forged internals, a 6-bolt main bearing design, and advanced materials that ensured strength without sacrificing refinement. The result was an engine that could hit 300,000 miles without breaking a sweat. Many examples have gone far beyond that, logging 500,000 miles with nothing more than regular oil changes and timing belt replacements. What set it apart wasn't just durability. It was how refined it was while lasting so long. The one UZ ran smooth, quiet, and vibration-free, giving Lexus owners the sense of invincibility that comes from knowing your engine won't let you down. Even today, The 1UZ is beloved in both luxury and performance circles. It's swapped into everything from drift cars to off-road rigs because people know it won't quit. The Toyota UZ series showed the world that luxury and longevity could live under the same hood. Engines like these prove that toughness isn't an accident. It's a choice. Automakers once built motors to last decades, not just warranty. Periods. From farm trucks to sports cars, these power plants outlived expectations and became legends in their own right. Which of these old-school beasts have you seen in action? Drop your stories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next engine we cover might just be under your hood.